Hello, and welcome to the webinar, Building Bridges. Patient advocacy groups can be vital partners in clinical research trials. Today, we'll be discussing how patient advocacy groups can play a crucial role in helping other partners better collaborate and accomplish their goals. My name is Caitlin Hirschman, and I'm a principal clinical team lead and have been with the CRO Row for almost 8 years. Shannon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi Caitlin. Hi everyone, my name is Shannon Kirby and I'm a senior clinical team lead at Row. I've been involved in clinical research for over 11 years and have been primarily focused in rare disease and cystic fibrosis for the last 9 years.
Thanks, Shannon. We're looking forward to moderating this discussion. In our own experience, we show how advocacy groups can be important partners in clinical research. When Row started full-service work in cystic fibrosis about 7 years ago or so, we wanted to build our experience within the CF landscape in order to better assist our clients, the sites, and the subjects. In doing so, we reached out to the Cystic Fibrosis Therapeutics Development Network, known as CF-TDN. Involvement with this group is critical in conducting the majority of clinical trials in the CF community. The CF-TDN has over 90 accredited CF centers across the U.S. Building a relationship with this group and many of the site research teams has been paramount to our success within the CF clinical research space. Our quarterly meetings with the CF-TDN team provides the Row team with insights on the latest CF advancements, pain points, and community priorities, as well as providing the CF-TDN team insight into Row's involvement in CF trials from the CRO perspective. Before we hear from our speakers about the details of how patient advocacy groups are involved in clinical trials, we have a few housekeeping matters for our viewers. At the bottom of your screen, you'll find some application widgets for your use. These widgets are all resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to optimize your desktop space. You can submit questions using the Q&A widget. If we can't get to your question by the end of today's session, someone will be available to follow up over email afterwards. The slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button in the top right-hand corner of your presentation window.
Perfect. So for today's discussion, we're going to be joined by two passionate patient advocates. I want to welcome Chandra and Gary. We'll start by letting them introduce themselves. Chandra, would you like to start by sharing a little about yourself, and then we can follow with Gary?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on today. My background is as a researcher in the infectious disease space. I've spent 15 to 20 years developing vaccines and novel antimicrobials to target multi-drug resistant bacterial infections. Currently, I serve as the Chief Scientific Officer of Emily's Entourage, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on accelerating and developing therapeutics and perhaps even a cure for patients living with CF, mainly targeting those that don't benefit from current therapeutics that are on the market, and also those who have nonsense mutations. So thank you again for having me on today.
Gary, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity today. I'm the father of a daughter with primary ciliary dyskinesia, also known as PCD. It's a genetic condition that affects the airways and can lead to chronic lung, ear, and sinus infections, along with other disorders such as recurrent pneumonias. My daughter was born in 2002, and I've been involved with the PCD Foundation for quite a long time. The emeritus, I think just that title emeritus just makes me old more than anything else. But been involved with many years, hopefully in the effort to improve the lives of my daughter and others that may be affected by this condition.
Thanks, Chandra and Gary. We're excited to have you both here to explore these topics. For today's agenda, we're going to cover the following topics: Patient advocacy is vital for advancement in managing disease. Patient advocacy groups can help advance clinical research. Individuals, groups, and sponsors can all play a role in patient advocacy. And finally, we'll close out with a case study and key takeaways to remember, as well as an audience Q&A session. So thanks again to you both for taking the time to speak with us. This should be an educational and engaging topic.
All right, so let's start by exploring the role that patient advocacy can play in the advancement of disease management. Many patient advocacy organizations have been around for years, but they haven't necessarily been closely involved with research organizations. We'd like for each of our panelists to discuss how patient advocacy is important for the condition they each represent. Sandra?
Hi, yes. So at Emily's Entourage, a lot of our focus is on funding academic labs at universities or even in startups and companies that are working on developing new therapeutics that can provide a cure or a therapy for the final 10% of CF patients. We also have a patient registry that helps patients get access to clinical trials. Through our community, we also get a sense of where these patients are. We try to empower them. We give them information about new trials and so on and so forth. So we think this patient registry is really essential and paramount to the work that we're doing at Emily's Entourage.
Yes, thank you. That was wonderful. Chandra, how about Gary?
Yeah, we see advocacy as an essential part of the foundation's our stated goal of raising awareness of the disorder and pushing for access to better care and treatment. We believe that patient advocacy is most helpful when it spreads the news about PCD, lets our people know about new trials and new therapies that may be coming down the pike or that they may actually have a chance to get involved with. I can only, speaking for our family, my daughter over the years has participated in several trials that we could not or would not have found out about the opportunities to participate in those without the involvement of the PCD Foundation.
Thanks to you both. So, as you alluded to, the patient advocacy groups are concerned with advancing treatments. Chandra, how do you see the patient advocacy groups making an impact on clinical research?
So I guess we can go back to the same, to, again, our patient registry, because that is so paramount and so central to everything we do, because we do want these clinical trials to happen. We do want patients to have access to these clinical trials. So a little bit about our registry. So our registry is made up of individuals with 1 or 2 copies of nonsense mutations of CF. This registry allows individuals to contribute their data, to become more informed about relevant research that's happening, clinical advances, as well as drug trials, and to expedite the whole development of life-saving therapeutics. So, and obviously we have this on our website. If people want to go and, register, if people with CF want to go and register, that would be great. On the flip side, Emily's Entourage also collaborates very closely with sponsors of a clinical trial or a research study. And this adds credibility in the minds of patients because we actually do vet these clinical trial protocols. We vet the companies that are coming to us to make sure that they're aligned with the mission of Emily's Entourage, that we are actually accelerating the development of therapeutics that are for the final 10%. So once the board, the sponsors reach out to us, we have our clinical research board that reviews what the company is proposing. And if it meets, again, the criteria that benefits the final 10%, we share the sponsor's trial information with our network of patients. When the information comes from us, again, it adds credibility from a patient's perspective. And if they want more information, they can always reach out to us or even their sponsors or even talk to their physicians. In addition to our patient registry and the matchmaking program, we also go to regulators on behalf, such as the FDA, to speak on behalf of sponsors who, may need, who may need, a patient voice to come and talk about, what really is needed in the development of this clinical trial. And finally, the goal is always to get these therapeutics as fast as possible. And we want to accelerate, this clinical trial process so patients who are in the final 10% do have access to these amazing drugs.
That's great, Chandra. Really, thank you. How about you, Gary?
Yeah, one of the important ways that patient groups, patient advocacy groups affects research is by boosting, in our situation, boosting the outlook of our patient communities. When patients hear from us about new research or a new trial, it provides them with the feeling that something positive is happening as they try to manage their condition. Patients and families with PCD, they're thirsty for knowledge. I've given presentations at locations for groups of families and patient advocates where parents and their advocates would stay after, trying to get any kind of tidbit they could of information they can learn. I truly believe these folks would stand there and talk and listen all night if there was that much information we could share. Along that same line, working with researchers gives us new information to share and helps patients and families feel positive about the future.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. So clearly, patient advocacy groups aren't just for the patients. Research sponsors and others can play a role in the patient advocacy organization, which can be mutually beneficial. How can individuals, groups, and sponsors get involved in patient advocacy work for your organization? Let's start with Chandra.
So we want to make the process as seamless and as easy as possible, both for the patients as well as the sponsors. So the easiest way for sponsors to get involved with Emily's entourage is to complete the intake form that is on our website to see if their program does truly align with our mission, which is, again, to accelerate therapeutics for the final 10% of CF patients who don't have any therapeutic options. For patients, on the other hand, who want to get involved, we also encourage them to join our registry so that when these trials and these opportunities to take part in clinical trials do come up, we can send them information, we can contact them, and they can be a perfect match for these clinical trials. And we need both sides to work together so we can advance these clinical trials forward.
Yes, thank you. And Gary, what about the PCD Foundation?
Yeah, a couple of items here at play, I guess. Our patients and advocates tell us that our website does a good job of providing information about how to get involved. We've just started a patient advisory committee, and we have subcommittees of patients and advocates that are involved with that. We also have folks from the health community, health professionals that are involved in some of these subcommittees. Due to the small size of the PCD Foundation, there's opportunities for folks to sponsor events. In fact, Roe was kind enough to help sponsor our scientific conference, which we refer to as PCD on the Move, back in the early summer, as an example of that. So very grateful for the work that you all are doing in that realm. I also tell folks that want to get more involved with the foundation, attend one of our events, interact with people, listen to their stories, and just start spreading the word about PCD or of course any rare disease that you or loved ones or friends may be involved with, may be affected by.
Wonderful. That's been really enlightening. And Gary, like you said, Ro did attend the Scientific on the Move, and we recently attended an Emily's Entourage event, actually this past weekend. So it's really critical for everyone, and certainly Ro knows the benefit of all this. Anyway, we have a couple questions. I'm going to start here. The first one, can you share an example, Chandra, this is for you. Can you share an example of a clinical trial sponsor that has gotten involved with your organization? How did it work out? I know I don't need specifics in terms of a sponsor, and you talked about the general process. Didn't know if you wanted to elaborate.
The only thing I would say is, the steps are quite, like I said, we want to make these trials as accessible as possible to people living with CF. And, this is, so far in our registry, we have around 470-ish patients. And this is not just US, this is predominantly in the US, but also ex-US patients. So, the easiest way, again, for the sponsors to take part, take part in our matchmaking process is to sign up and fill out the intake form online, and then someone from Emily's entourage will reach out to you to gather more information. And once there is, overlap in terms of, what our mission is and what the sponsors want to achieve, we can start working together and figure out ways of spreading the information to the patients on our registry and making sure that patients have access and can be on these clinical trials.
That's great. That's great. And again, we're talking about such a small population, but just so important. So we really, really appreciate that. I'm going to, since your microphone is off, I'm going to have one more question that looked like it also came from the audience. So for Chandra, what do you mean by vetting the trial protocol? Are you involved early in the process of the trial development when the trial is being designed so you can give input and the patient's voice is heard?
It can be in many ways. Sometimes sponsors will come, through, they've already been vetted by the CFF's TDN, where they'll already have a protocol in place. Sometimes companies engage with us much earlier on to kind of figure out how feasible, these clinical trials would be. Where are these patients located, for site selection? We don't really have the capabilities of helping design, the protocol itself, but we can give certain input, like in terms of, where these patients are, what information we have, like, just like, whether these are, patients who have 2 copies of a nonsense mutation or 1 copy. So a little bit of that, behind the scenes information that can help the sponsor figure out how to expedite the trial process, where these patients are located, whether in the US, whether on the West Coast, East Coast, and so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that, these sponsors do, like, these trials are incredibly difficult because now we are talking about a few hundred, to a few thousand patients in the US. So we want to make sure that these patients' voices are heard, they have access to these clinical trials, and, anything we can do to expedite that process, we are willing to help. So in terms of vetting, we don't really help. We don't have the manpower to really help design the protocol, but once it comes, pre-approved, whether through the TDN or, most sponsors already have had conversations with the FDA, so they already have a protocol in place. But we encourage sponsors to talk with us early on. We have companies, that, kind of span that spectrum, companies that want to initiate a conversation when they're even in the preclinical stages, companies that are already much more advanced where they have, sometimes even, they have their FDA document and they're just looking to, select patients and start the trial very soon. So it's a whole spectrum of companies that we see.
Thank you, Chandra. We do have another question from the group, and Gary, I'm thinking maybe you can address this question. So the question is, when a sponsor provides information about a trial, what does it take for your organization to get on board and collaborate with them?
Yeah, I think for us, it's communication more than anything. As I had mentioned earlier, our community being very small, being a rare disease, they're starved for knowledge. And I guess hope is another term to use. They want to be involved. When we do get these opportunities, we notify our community via our Clinical Centers Research Network. It's our group of medical centers, hospitals that are involved with PCD research and the like. It's also almost cliche-ish, but social media has become so important in the spreading of information and knowledge and the ability to get involved with these trials. But our patients and families, they get excited about the opportunity to participate in trials whenever, wherever they can. We have a willing audience. I guess, our job is to get the information to communicate to them that these things are going on and they can get involved.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'll take the next question here. It's actually a question for the Row team, so I'll ask it. And Caitlin, if you want to jump in and start off. So this question is for Row. You can share some specific ways you've been involved with the CF Foundation or other patient advocacy groups, and how that involvement has informed your work in clinical trials?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Shannon. So in terms of our involvement, I'll start with CF and move to PCD. So we've attended the North American Cystic Fibrosis Conference over the last 5 or so years. The last couple of years, of course, have been remote, but we're really excited in 2 weeks to be going to Philadelphia to attend the upcoming NACFC. So that's really exciting. We're there, we can see our sites, meet the site staff, talk to our sponsors, what have you. And it's really great. And the plenary sessions, just so much knowledge there. It's such a treat to be able to attend. We also, in terms of locally, we've organized and attended some cystic fibrosis walks. We've attended the Brewers Ball, Master Chefs has been a local event, all raising awareness and monetary funds for cystic fibrosis. Also, we've had several Row team members that have been part of the Tomorrow's Leaders program. It's a program which provides even more support and leadership within the CF community. In terms of PCD, as Gary mentioned, we provided sponsorship and attended the PCD on the Move Scientific Conference, and certainly hope to attend many more PCD meetings in the future. Shannon?
Yeah, so for me, prior to starting at Row, I was already really involved in CF research as I worked at the CFTDN from 2013 to 2021. So the CF community had really grown a special place in my heart, and it wasn't really just a job for me. It was something that I participated in on the weekends and in the evenings. I would join in on CF bake sales, participate in the annual Cycle for Life bike ride here in Seattle, Washington, participate in the CF walks, and then several other different opportunities to support the CF community. For me, really, the best part is the friendships that I've built and created within the CF community and network. It's really a tight-knit community. And over the last 9 years, this really has been invaluable to my career and being able to manage clinical trials with these teams that I know so well. So it's been a treat for me, and it's definitely a special place and a special group to be part of. All right, so I think we're close to being out of time. So at this point, we want to thank Chandra and Gary for taking the time today to share their experience and insight with us. We would also like to send a huge thank you to Nicole Kaur, who's a CF patient and one of our CF champions, who definitely contributed a lot to this webinar and the content that we presented today. Unfortunately, Nicole was unable to attend today's webinar at the last minute, but we want to thank her and send our thanks. And then for our viewers, if you asked a question during that Q&A session that we didn't get to, the Row team will be able to deliver an answer to you via email. So today's webinar will also be on demand if you want to review anything that we've talked about today. And then just again, thanks for attending and watching, and have a wonderful day.